How do you define noble purpose in a sales context? And why does it have the power to radically boost sales?
And when you talk about selling with noble purpose, the challenge is most sales teams are run to hit the number, but the number is a trailing indicator. It is the result of how well you're adding value to customers. And when you shift the true north, like you mentioned, Hilton's true north was set 100 years ago by Conrad Hilton. It's to fill the earth with the light and warmth of hospitality, which might sound like some fluffy thing. But if I'm sitting down and I'm the rep for Hilton and I'm trying to get you to plan your meeting with us, and my true north is, how can I fill your people with the light and warmth of hospitality? We're going to have a lot better conversation than if I'm the sales rep just trying to close a deal on your meeting. The research is super clear. Companies with a purpose bigger than money, whose true north is to improve life for customers, and the salespeople who want to improve life for customers also have more resilience.
Truth be told, I'm a sponge. I love to learn. You've got to tell the customer what to do, tell them what to buy. And I'm like, telling's not selling. And so what you need to sell them can be vastly different than actually what they're looking for. Not so much tell them what to do, because I don't believe telling is selling, but guide them to understand the root cause of this problem.
And now the man you've been waiting for, John, the sales machine, Rankins.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are in for a treat. Today's guest, Lisa Earle McLeod, is the best-selling author and consultant behind Selling with Noble Purpose. She has spoken worldwide, written 5 books, and her work has reached over 2 million professionals on LinkedIn Learning. Trusted by leaders at Hilton, LinkedIn, and several startups, Lisa is a trusted contributor of Harvard Business Review and has been featured in media like Fortune and the New York Times. Lisa, welcome to the show.
I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I'm delighted to have you on. In today's world, noble selling and selling with noble purpose, now that there's AI, let's talk about that and how that's going to work itself out. I'm just going to start the show with that one.
So AI is a tool, and a lot of the sales teams that I coach use AI. And so you can use it in one of 2 ways, just like any tool. You can use AI to be tricky and manipulative and send out massive emails that reek of AI, probably not going to be successful. Or you can use AI to deepen your understanding of your customers and then use that information to be a more trusted advisor.
And it's really that simple. But lots of people talk about, how to increase sales, how to prospect and do different things. But in the context of this interview and to provide value to all of the listeners out there, how do you define noble purpose in a sales context? And why does it have the power to radically boost sales?
So where I first landed on this concept was about 12 years ago, and it was based on a study I did of a high-performing sales team. And we wanted to identify what differentiated the top performers from the good performers. So we all know the difference between good salespeople and bad salespeople. Good salespeople wake up and make sales calls. They know their product. They know their customers. Bad salespeople don't. But this company wanted to look at something a little more nuanced. What's the difference between the exceptional and the good? So like the 99% and the 75%. And what we found was, and it was through anecdotal interviews, that the exceptional people had a different true north. When questioned, their true north was not the number. They were all at the top of the numbers, but their true north was improving life for customers. And it guided every single interaction that they had. And when you talk about selling with noble purpose, the challenge is most sales teams are run to hit the number. But the number is a trailing indicator. It is the result of how well you're adding value to customers. And when you shift the true north, like you mentioned, Hilton's true north was set 100 years ago by Conrad Hilton. It's to fill the earth with the light and warmth of hospitality, which might sound like some fluffy thing. But if I'm sitting down and I'm the rep for Hilton and I'm trying to get you to plan your meeting with us, and my true north is how can I fill your people with the light and warmth of hospitality? We're going to have a lot better conversation than if I'm the sales rep just trying to close the deal on your meeting. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And, once you came across this, how did the book come about, you putting it all together?
So
His
when I
books
first,
aren't easy. I've written a couple and, it's not easy.
oh, they're not. And I had written some books before, and I had, the 10,000 hours, whether we believe it or not. I definitely have my 10,000 hours in as a sales coach. And when I identified this thing, this seemingly urethral gauzy thing called noble purpose, once I saw it with clarity, it was kind of like one of those movies where the person finds out that their spouse is the killer or whatever, and they go back through like 100 events and they go, oh, it all makes sense now. And, they flash back to everything that happened. So once I saw that, I flash back. That's why the training stuck with these people. That's why these people ask better discovery questions. That's why this company was more successful than that company. And then did a lot of research, and the research is super clear. And I'll cite two things. Companies with a purpose bigger than money, whose true north is to improve life for customers, outperform transactional companies by 350%. Clear as day. People whose true north, whose noble purpose is to improve life for customers, outperform transactional salespeople. And the salespeople who want to improve life for customers also have more resilience. So what I did is I started working this with some of my clients. And then this is Selling with Noble Purpose actually in the second edition now. And so I went back through and said, okay, if your noble purpose is to improve life for clients, how do you run your meetings? How do you coach? What do your presentations look like? What does your pre-call planning look like? And got that granular on it. And then provided, especially in the second edition, examples of clients and how they activated it across their organization.
Yeah, I love that. I already know your third book.
What?
It's Leading with Noble Purpose.
I did that.
You already did that.
I did that.
Well, there you go. I'm so far behind.
Well, I'll tell you how I ended up writing it. The first edition was Selling with Noble Purpose, was doing okay. And this is like 12 years ago. So people were like, Noble Purpose? Does she work with charities? What is this? It took a while to get traction.
Yeah,
But a
does.
guy, yeah. But we had some early adopters, and the early adopters tended to be founder-led companies where that founder was clear on their vision and mission for the company. But a guy that wrote for Forbes, a guy named Steve Denning, who reviewed books for Forbes, stumbled across it and wrote a glowing review in Forbes, which was huge. But at the end, so I'm reading it, I'm just like, yes, that's so awesome. He's like, I love this book. And at the very end of the review, he says, if I have one quibble, it's if the sales team adopts this noble purpose philosophy and the rest of the company doesn't, it won't work. And I was like, damn it. He's right.
Yeah.
And I sent him a note. I was like, I guess I have to write another book. But he is right.
100%. And that's why I connected the dots real
Right.
time, because I don't know about your book, and you were turned on to me by Alan Versteeg. And truth be told, I'm a sponge. I love to learn. And I'm a big Zig Ziglar fan. Service, come from service. And a lot of people are like, no, you don't come from service. You've got to tell the customer what to do, tell them what to buy. And I'm like, telling's not selling. This is completely different for me, my mindset.
Well, and the interesting thing is, telling is not selling. There are times when you're with a customer, and because you deeply understand them and they do trust you, you can recommend they do something different than they thought they wanted to do because you have that deep expertise. And that's one of the things that I wanted to make really clear in the book. A lot of people talk about customer centricity, and that's better than saying we don't care about customers. But what I find in a lot of organizations, when you cascade that down, it winds up with the sales and service people feeling like they're indentured servants to the customer. And that's not helpful either. Instead, what you want is the seller's true north is to improve life for the customer. And sometimes that might mean they have ideas and suggestions that aren't what the customer thinks they want. But because they have a deep understanding of the space and the customer's goals, they offer those in the spirit of noble purpose, not in the spirit of, I'm going to tell you why you're wrong.
Amen. And a lot of the times the customers don't even know what they just know the symptoms, but they don't know the problem. And so what you need to sell them can be vastly different than actually what they're looking for. So
That's
I
right.
have a lot of people approach me about sales training and training their organizations. And literally they'll say, well, my salespeople, they aren't any good. And I'll ask them, okay, great. Do you have a sales system? And they'll be like, no. So you don't have a training system? No. So is it your people aren't any good or your training sucks?
Right. Well,
So
and
I'll
then
go deeper and then guide them, not so much tell them what to do, because I don't believe telling is selling, but guide them to understand the root cause of this problem is
right,
not what you think is the problem. You got
right.
great people. You just don't have a system,
You don't have a
or
system, you
your
haven't trained
methodology
them.
sucks.
Well, one of the things that I
I'm
liken it
laughing
to,
because you're laughing.
one of the things I liken it to is if you were trying to train a runner and you wanted them to get better, you can shout their times to them. Go faster. You're at 32. You need to get to 31. Go faster. Go faster. And it's going to work a little bit. But at a certain point, it's not. Like you're not training them. You're just shouting a number at them. And that's what we do to salespeople. Sell more, sell more, sell more. It's the end of the quarter. It's the end of the quarter. That works a little bit when the pressure's on and you dangle some money, but you wind up with this. One of the things we always say is if you treat your customers like a number, what all our customers are a vehicle for us to make money. If you treat your customers like a number, they will return the favor. And I can track if you're there at your sales meeting saying, hit the number, hit the number, hit the number, hit the number. A couple months from now, you're going to have a low margin transactional sales force
I
because you
agree.
haven't given them any compelling story to take to the customer.
I agree. Yeah. And, the sales machine is a software that drives performance, right? With rewards, recognition, competition, compensation. And it's all about me taking care of the people or building a system that takes care of the salespeople so the salespeople take care of the clients. As an example, it's really people centric, the software. And we literally, I built a company called Optimo where we empower ordinary people to become extraordinary with our sales system, our products, our services. And, at year 30, I decided, you know what? Now I want to use that same psychology and the methodology and put it into technology so I can empower ordinary companies to become extraordinary by taking care of their people with the software. And that's just what I know from doing it. It's living it, literally creating leadership camps, new sales system. I'm writing a book now called Next Level Sales. And
Yes.
Next Level Sales is taking people or companies from wherever they're at to what's their next level and fulfilling that for them. And how do we do it? There's a whole framework to do it. But essentially, it comes back to noble purpose, and leading with noble purpose is what it's going to take for companies to implement selling with noble purpose.
That's
Tell me
right.
about a horror story, right? We're not going to just talk about the good. We can talk about how it became good, but tell me about a horror story that you've experienced working with the company that you've actually turned around.
One I've turned around. Let me tell you about a horror story, and then I'll tell you how it ended. It didn't
Okay.
end great. It ended in medium.
Okay.
Oh, anyone who's listening to this, if you're old enough to remember monster.com was one of the top 20 most visited websites in the world in the early 2000s. Monster.com was where people went to go look for jobs. And it was founded by a gentleman named Jeff Taylor. And he and his team believed that everybody deserved a great job. So their noble purpose was to help you find a great job. They were an early darling of Wall Street, one of the top 20 tech stocks in the world for several years in a row. And they were on fire. They used to run these ads called, "When I grow up, I want to be, whatever." They were great ads. And this sense of we are helping people find great jobs was noble purpose, alive and well in the company. They would tell stories. "Look, we helped John. He was living in his mama's basement. Now he's got a job. Look at how great we are." And so Jeff Taylor and the original team left, and a new team came in. And you can tell by the transcripts from their annual meetings, the internal conversation changed. And the conversation went from, "We're helping people find great jobs. We're helping companies find great people." The conversation went to, "We got to hit our quarterly numbers. What's the traffic on the boards?" So they went from talking about the impact they were having to talking about the transaction, how much money we're making, how much traffic we're getting on the boards. The reason, if you're young, you're thinking, "What's this monster company?" You don't know about them, is because while they were talking about numbers, LinkedIn was in a room talking about how can we create opportunity for every member of the global workforce. That's literally their purpose. And so Monster ended up being sold for pennies on the dollar. So because they became irrelevant. So when I say it has a medium end, I wrote this article about them when the CEO left. And I wrote an article on Forbes.com, how Monster lost their mojo. And all these people started commenting, and they were Monster employees. So, when you comment, you're not like Basement Boy 257. You're like, Lisa McLeod. And so all these people started commenting. And they were employees, and they were saying, "Oh, we used to love it here. Now it's terrible, blah, 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 blah." So then I get a call from the new Monster CEO who wants to meet with me. And I'm thinking, I'm getting called like to the principal's office. Oh my God, I'm going to get sued or something. This is terrible. But everything I said was a fact. So I go in to meet with them, and there's like 3 other people in the room. And I'm just like, I'm a grown woman. I'm an author, but I was 10. I was just like, "Oh my God, they're going to get mad at me. It's going to be terrible." And there's all these older guys. I mean, I'm older too, but whatever. So I sit down and I'm like, "So, you asked to meet with me. What's this about?" And they go, "Well, we have something really important to ask you." And I'm like, "I'm totally getting sued." And they go, "We read your article." And I'm like, "Okay, here it comes. One of these guys is a lawyer." And they go, "Do you think you could help us?" It's like, I almost said it out loud.
Yeah.
So that's my story of the terrible company. I helped them a little bit. They ended up being sold for a little more than they would have otherwise. So it didn't end great, but I didn't get sued, and it ended medium. So in terms of turnarounds, I'll be candid with you. There's only been a handful that I've turned around. Usually most of the people that call us already have some sense of purpose, but they've started to lose it, and they want to make it more explicit, and they want to use it to ramp things up. Like Hilton is a good example. I mean, they were doing pretty well before they called us, but the CEO said, "We're coming out of COVID. My people have gone the extra mile. I want to go back to our legacy purpose. I want everyone around the world engaged. I want to beat the competition." So they were one that the earnings just took off, and the results took off. The employee engagement took off. But they weren't coming at it from everybody hates working here. They were doing pretty well.
Yeah, but that's a great point you make, because sometimes we just lose our way. And
Yeah.
it's happened to me. We need a checkup from the neck up. And it's good to get outside your box, because I've been a sales consultant, but I ran my own company, and I've run my own company for 30 years. And by the grace of God and my work ethic, I'm still around, and we're still, plugging along. But essentially, we all have a blind spot. Even companies have blind spots. So having the ability to bring someone in to actually see what is the blind spot? What went wrong? Sometimes it goes wrong, and you want to be more profitable. You want to have more customers. You want to have clients, and like in COVID, that black swan event, companies go into crisis mode,
Right.
and so then it's not just about the noble purpose. Sometimes you lose your way because it's about, I got to make payroll.
I got to make payroll. And
And I'm
it
not
is,
a public company. I don't have shareholders that can just inject, or divert funds. There's a lot of companies out there that's like, I got to make payroll,
yeah,
and so, even myself, I put my head down and, I kept the same purpose. But now I'm pivoting and shifting from helping ordinary people become extraordinary with our products, our system, and our training, and more focused on doing it for companies. So, how did you get involved in this space, and how did you get involved in sales from the early beginning? And were you noble in the beginning, or were you a vampire?
neither.
Neither. Okay.
Humans are complex. And if you want to know what someone struggled with, look at the title of their book. And really, how I got into this, my first job was in sales. And I came from a barely middle class family. And I went into sales because I wanted to make money, because I, had struggled through college, financially. I didn't have any debt. So my parents were able to, stayed school. But I wanted to make money. And I remember one particular moment. I was going to a party with my then boyfriend, who later became my husband. And he's a couple years older than I am. And I was graduating from college. He was my boyfriend. He'd already graduated. He had, a grown up job. And we were going to this party at his boss's house. So, I'm obviously going to be the youngest one there. He's one of the youngest ones in the company. And we go to this party, and I know that everyone's going to ask me, "So, you're graduating from college. What are you going to do?" And literally the week before, I had gotten what I deemed my dream job. I was going to be a sales rep for Procter and Gamble, and I wanted that job so bad I could taste it. They're going to recruit 3 people off our campus. I got it. And so my boyfriend's boss comes up to me and says, "So, dearie, I understand you're graduating. What are you going to be doing? Do you have plans after graduation?" She's a nice lady, but she's like a fancy lady, at this fancy house, and I'm like 21 years old. And so she says, "So, dearie, what are you going to be doing?" And I said, "Well, I've just gotten a job in sales." And she looks at me and she goes, "Oh my, I don't think I could do that." And I was so excited about my job that I didn't understand what she meant. I thought when she said, "Oh, I don't think I could do that," that she was like, I was being like a brain surgeon or a firefighter, something so cool that she didn't think she could ever do it. I didn't understand until like a year later that she meant, "Oh, sales is disgusting."
Yeah.
Get it. But you asked me, that was a rather long answer. I was in sales. I was in sales leadership. I was in sales training at P&G, and I left there and went to work for a sales training company and ended up becoming the VP of sales there, and then left there to go out on my own. But there's always been 2 sides of my life. One is that I love being in sales, and sales makes the wheels of commerce spin. And anybody who has disdain for sales doesn't understand the way the world works. Because if it wasn't for sales, we wouldn't have companies, we wouldn't have business, you wouldn't own the stuff you own. And sales is one of the few professions that we allow to be defined by the people who do it badly. Because the research tells us the best salespeople actually care deeply about their customers. So I've always had this lane of my life. It was very important to me to have financial success and have the companies I work for have financial success. But I have another lane in my life that cares deeply about people and humans. And I'm a mother and I have spiritual beliefs. And so for a long time, those 2 lanes felt like they were in competition. They were gradually starting to come together when I did that study. And I saw beyond a shadow of a doubt that the best salespeople wanted to improve life for customers and they wanted to make money, and that those 2 things actually went together. And that's why I wrote the book, because I think most salespeople do care about their customers. They do care about them. The challenge is the need to meet payroll, the need to meet quarterly capitalism. The conversation about the money overshadows what people believe in their hearts. And our research and our own experience tells us if you can get that heartfelt belief front and center and make it an explicit part of your company, people will be happier and you will make more money.
Amen. I love your psychology. I have the same psychology. So, I mean, and ultimately, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but when companies go public, now they have to answer to shareholders, and shareholders, they made an investment. And they made an investment not to change the world. They made an investment for a return on investment.
That's right.
And so that's where I think a lot of the times it goes wrong, because the directions of the company and the mandate is now changed. It's about shareholders want a return on investment, whereas when you set up the company, it was for a noble purpose and making a difference in people's lives. And I think that's how it can go wrong, and where companies need a checkup from the neck up in order for them to stay on track. Now, I love the psychology. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
What I was just going to say is, so when we first started with this, we tended to be hired by privately held companies, and that's like 12 years ago. We've since implemented this with a number of publicly traded companies, and the stock went up. The challenge is, as a leader, you cannot manage to lagging indicators. So I use Hilton. Chris Nassetta is the CEO of Hilton. He's got to deliver those quarterly earnings, but he can't run the company on that. One of the CEOs that we work with, this guy was the CEO of Atlantic Capital Bank, and they had record earnings, Banker of the Year on the cover of American Banker, talking about their noble purpose. And he said, I manage the company to the numbers, but I lead the company to the purpose.
Amen.
And it's really important that leaders understand that, because, like, I use the example of a track coach shouting the numbers. A teacher can say test scores, test scores, test scores all day, but that's the trailing indicator. That they've got to ignite the love of learning. They have to get students engaged. Like, there's a whole lot of things they need to do. And we make the mistake, and the shareholders have every right to expect quarterly earnings. Because if I'm going to park my money here, it needs to show me that it's going to do better than if I, kept it under my mattress. And so the thing we need to understand, though, is the numbers are the trailing indicator. The numbers are the result of what your people feel and believe, and what your customers feel and believe about your company. And so you can run a company as a transactional company, and you can run a successful company, but you're always going to be fighting for margin, and you're never going to be the leader in your space.
Hey, folks, if you're enjoying this episode and you're picking up what I'm putting down and what the guests are actually putting out there, do me a favor, like and comment what you liked about the episode, or even comment what would you like to hear, what topics would you like to hear in the future, because believe me, it matters. I read absolutely every single one of them, and I want to bring you more and more value to help companies scale so that we can grow this podcast to make a bigger difference. Now let's get back to the show. It makes sense. And so that's the psychology behind noble purpose, as well as leading with noble purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So selling and leading. So let's go into the methodology. So what is, you go into these companies, right? And it's not like, if you've done it private companies, you've done it public companies, you've got a long track record. What is your methodology for instilling the psychology of selling with noble purpose into a company?
So the first thing we have to get clear on is, how do you make a difference to customers? So I gave you Conrad Hilton 100 years ago said, we fill the earth with the light and warmth of hospitality. That's beautiful. Everyone doesn't have something that beautiful. We worked with an IT company, and we interviewed a bunch of their people. We interviewed some of their customers. It was anecdotal. It doesn't have to be a big, long market research project. But it all came down to, we sat there in a meeting with the senior leaders, said these are the themes that came out, and we landed on a noble purpose statement. We help make small businesses more successful. That's it. Like, it doesn't have to be poetic. But now that we know we make small businesses more successful, now every piece of marketing that we have is about that. Now, when we are at our sales meetings, we talk. So we've got a number of places that we teach people how you open your calls, the questions you ask, the way you run your sales meetings, the way you share collaterals, the way you share stories. So we got a punch list that we go through. And what happens is people manage to the numbers by default because they're easy to understand. It's what we're all taught in business school. And if you start to look at what do we talk about in meetings? We talk about ourselves. We talk about numbers. Instead, all we need to do is shift that to where half the time, doesn't have to be all the time, we talk about the impact we're having on customers. What do we coach to? What do our presentations illustrate? And so we've got a punch list that we go through. And what we find is there's probably between 10 and 15 seemingly small tweaks that when we make them, they move the emotional center of the company from internal numbers focus to external customer impact focus.
I love it. So whenever you implement these things, how long does it normally take for you to see a result of the work you're doing?
Something happens on day one. We always say 1 day and 1 year. So on day one, when we give voice to the idea that this company makes a difference to customers, and we virtually, in person, however we do it, we have the CEO saying, this is our purpose, and these are examples, we get an emotional lift. Day one from that. That gives us the emotional lift. Typically, we see an earnings result in a year when they do the next year's revenue. And again, this isn't an exact science. If there's a contraction in the market, if they have a product failure, all these things that can happen. But most of our clients experience over the course of a year, and most of our clients are B2B clients. So they're making bigger, longer term enterprise sales. Over the course of a year, we just worked with an industrial company that increased their sales by 50%, which is a lot on millions.
Especially, yeah.
Yeah. And it's because they sold bigger deals. They got to the C-suite. They sold enterprise deals because before they were just this commodity, and they're not going to change. Their product is commoditized, but the way that they bring it to customers and the things that they can put with it enabled them to step out of that. So we had one client that's pretty famous now. It was Hootsuite that became a unicorn, $1 billion valuation. And we started with them in the early days. And over the course of, I would say it was probably 3 years, they were able to become a unicorn. They grew, we've got the number on our website, 2,731% or some insane number.
Is that it? Yeah, that's yeah. I work with companies and even my own, I'm like, even if we only grow 1% a week, we'll get 52% minimum. And
right.
That's not compounding it in a year.
I was going to say compound that, you get different math. And I don't want to over promise because we've had other companies that grew 10% on $1 billion base. That's a lot of money. And for us, the two metrics that we always work to when we're with clients are the revenue growth and the emotional engagement of the people. And those are both measurable things.
I love that. I call it buy-in.
The buy-in.
It's one thing for a CEO to say it, but then when you go in to implement the methodology, have you ever experienced resistance? And I know you have. Because I'm in this space, or I've been in this space and place before. And, sometimes you'll go in and there'll just be that one guy who says, no, I don't sell that way. I have my own clients. I have my, relationship selling, but he has no new clients. Tell me about your different experiences with getting buy-in?
So we tend to encounter two types of resistance. We almost never get resistance from the top salespeople, because top salespeople go, yeah, welcome to the party. I've been selling like this all along. I'm glad the rest of you are on board. But the two types of resistance we get at a senior executive level, we will get resistance from occasionally, not always, but a CFO or COO or someone like that that is concerned we're doing some touchy-feely thing and that they're going to not be okay on the numbers. That happens less and less because now we have a lot more hard data from clients. But the other type of resistance that we get is interesting. I'll go speak at a meeting, and I speak at a lot of conferences and a lot of national sales meetings, and I'll speak, and someone will come up and say, I believe this, but what do you think the but is?
But we've been doing this like this all along, and or I get results doing it my own way.
Usually the but is the company doesn't believe this. And I'll say, well, they hired me and brought me in, so maybe they do. But the but that I get the most, the resistance I get the most is, I want to sell this way. I believe this. But my boss, all they care about is numbers. They don't care about our customers. All they care about is numbers. That's the most resistance. That is the most entrenched resistance. And it's recoverable because oftentimes I find that the boss has only been giving voice to the numbers because they're under so much pressure for the numbers, but they actually do care about customers.
Yeah, and it's a great point because, the messaging has to come from the top, and the directive has to come from the top as far as being a noble purpose-driven organization to make
And it does. It needs to come from the top. But I'll also say, and one of the things we really worked on in the last couple of years is the people that are not at the top need to understand that when the top is under the gun for numbers, it doesn't mean they don't care about customers. And it's just like that teacher under pressure for test scores. They didn't become a teacher because they hate students. They love students most of the time. And so one of the things we've really worked on in organizations is we all have a responsibility to keep this alive. It has to be bought in at the top, but they can't be the sole carriers of the narrative.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just buy-in, is everybody aligning with the vision of being something greater than yourself.
And that's what human beings want. And this is one of the reasons why this works from an emotional engagement standpoint. Intellectually, it works from a customer standpoint because who would you rather do business with? The company who's here to improve you or the company who just wants to close you? So it works for that reason. But the reason it works from an emotional engagement standpoint is once we get beyond food and shelter, humans have two fundamental needs. We want belonging and we want significance. Belonging is we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and significance is we want our role to matter. So if I stand up in front of my whole team and I say, you are nothing but a cog in our money machine, which is in effect what a lot of leaders say when they say, we got to make money, we got to make money. I'm telling you, this is your whole purpose in this work is to be a cog in my money machine. It's only a matter of time before those people disengage. But if we say, this is how our work makes a difference to customers, and this is how you contribute, and we don't have to change the world. We can help small businesses be more successful and help them go to sleep at night because they're not worried about their IT. Like, that's enough. And when I'm part of that, I have a very different feeling about my job.
Yeah. And so when you go into these companies, because a lot of people hearing this, obviously they should buy the book. They should buy both books, Leading with Noble Purpose and Selling with Noble Purpose. When you go in and implement the psychology and methodology, do you do it with the team? Do you do it with the leaders of the company? Are you running the sales training or are you training the trainers?
Both. So we are a small boutique consulting firm. Is myself and my business partner, Elizabeth, who's the co-author. Elizabeth Latardo, who's the co-author of this book. So for us, what's most important is that when we leave, they own it. So when we go into a company, we're working with the senior team. We are running some sales training, but then we are transitioning over so that they are running it. and that they are one of the things that we found. You mentioned COVID, the Black Swan event. We have reoriented all of our training so that it's short, it's quick, it can be done virtually, and it can be implemented by managers. So we'll generally do some sort of a kickoff, and then we're having internal people run.
I love it. And it says there, Global Gurus, number 3. Right behind you, you got this award, right? Tell me about that.
I don't know how they decide these things, but I was the number 3 sales guru in the world for whatever that means. I don't know if it's like the Oscars or what, but there I.
Hey, no, I love it. And so, do you do training globally or implement your system globally?
We do. We've worked with a lot of big companies, and we've also worked with companies. We just did a project with a company based in London that was mostly based over in Europe. And it's a combination of, one, I am certainly willing to travel, but also so much of what we're doing can be done, over Zoom, over Teams. That's just how people are working now. And what we try and do is we put a lot of study into it, learning in the flow of work. We've all been to that 2 or 3 day workshop, and maybe you get a lift, maybe you don't, but it doesn't stick. And so what we have come to understand at a very deep level is we provide people tools. Okay, it's your weekly sales meeting. You're going to tell these customer impact stories. It's going to take 7 minutes at the start of the meeting. That's all for this week. So that we are shifting the culture and changing the sales narrative in ways that don't add a ton of work to people.
Got it. You work with anybody in Southeast Asia?
I can't think of anybody's based there. I've been there. Part of the project we did for Hilton, we went there.
Yeah. I'm currently in Southeast Asia, right? So if
I
somebody,
would love to come again if someone's listening.
yeah, no worries. Because where'd you go? Most people go to Thailand.
I've
or
been to
Singapore.
Thailand. I've been to Singapore. I did a project in Thailand for a big Australian company. Part of the work was in Thailand. Yeah. So I've been to Thailand and Singapore. And I guess when I think about that, Hong Kong is not Southeast Asia, is it?
It is.
Okay. Those 3.
Yeah. And I've been to all 3 of those. Actually,
They're
worked.
fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll probably have to do. Do you do seminars and workshops?
I do.
Right. So we probably have to bring you to the Philippines, and prop you up so you can work with some of the big companies here, right? And I absolutely love what you do. I
Well,
love
thank you.
what you do and how you do it. I have a ton of respect. I love sales. I love being a part of making a difference in people's lives. And like you said, Tony Robbins, I traveled with him for a while around the world, and belonging and significance. He says it's the 2 greatest fears people have is they're not good enough and they won't be loved. So loved is the belonging,
It is.
and obviously not good enough is the significance. And I 100% believe in it. And I believe companies are about people, not products and services. And so for me, how do we make a difference in our people's lives so that they can make a difference in our clients and customers' lives? And I think that's leading with noble purpose. And I think you've nailed it.
Thank you.
I know you've nailed it. And the track record of growing companies. So I'd love for you to come out and grow my company by 2,397% this year, like you did Hootsuite or whatever's on your website. Absolutely amazing. What's the greatest feeling of success you've ever had having worked with the company? I mean that you know that you feel was your greatest success.
For me, if I'm honest, my true north is when people wake up excited about work. And a lot of where my study of the psychology of this comes from is I had 2 parents who were both professionals. One loved their job and one hated their job. And it made all the difference in how they live their lives. And one of the things that makes me really just so sad is when people go to jobs that they think are meaningless. And every job has parts that you don't like, and that's why you get paid. And if it was wonderful, you'd pay them, and we call it Disneyland. But for me, when people say, I just spoke at this conference, and some of the guys from one division that had implemented this said they were just on fire. They'd had great results, they'd closed bigger deals, and they were like, selling is fun again. And their whole lives are animated by that. I mean, they're successful, they're making more money, they're going home excited, they're having the good tired at the end of the day. Their whole lives are lit up. Because the thing is, I mean, we're going to spend what, 40, 50, 60, 20, 80, however many hours a week at work. It is just a crime against nature for you to hate it.
Yeah. And I'm in total alignment. Like, literally, to watch people. Unfortunately, a lot of people tell you, what cannot be done. They don't tell
Right.
you what can. And the reason why is because it's the wrong person in the wrong role. Because if they were in love with it, they'll figure it out.
Right. And we had a client, one of our early adopters, a guy named Bruce Poon Tip, and he ran a company called G Adventures. They were an adventure travel company, and they were one of our first adopters. I hadn't even written the book yet. I'd written an article, and he called me and said, hey, can you come do this with my sales team? He's awesome. And we later did a LinkedIn learning course where we featured him. And he said something that was really interesting. He said, a lot of people are raised to think that work should be awful. They've heard it at their kitchen table from their parents. Oh, the boss man this, the company hates us, it's terrible. And they don't even have a lens that says work could be exciting or fun. And I don't want to minimize, I had some guys out here doing some hard work on my deck. That is hard work. They're out there pounding a hammer. The weather's not great. And so I'm not so naive that I think every job is just sunshine. But he said, a lot of people, it almost feels like cheating to them to think that work can be fun. And you have to unpack that belief system and help them see, like, this is a contribution. This is meaningful. And he said, but even if you're doing a great job as a leader, you have to go beyond, because they've come to you with a belief system that says this is going to suck. And you didn't create it, but you got to be the one that says it doesn't have to. Let's think about this differently. And it really helped me have a lot of empathy for people when he said that. And he said, you want people that are willing to let go of that belief system, but recognize that they may come to you with it.
Yeah. It comes to my mind. I bought someone who's very special to me, a planner, just a planner. And, if you open the planner, there's nothing inside.
Yeah.
It's just something you fill out. But on the front of the planner, and this individual was going through some hard times in life, right? But I love the individual, and they're special to me. And on the outside of the book, the planner, it said, fall in love with your life. That's all it said. It was fall in love with your life. And I'm like, what a wonderful message, right? Because, even Steve Jobs, and I know early on he was a tyrant. Like, I've interviewed Steve Wozniak, who's just an amazing man, just a beautiful soul. He's a beautiful soul. And I asked him about how to grow my company. But, sometimes I get intrigued and caught up in the individual and forget about all the professionalism. Because it's more important to me to get the life lesson than to actually get a strategy or a tactic that is going to evolve sales. When Steve Jobs did that Stanford speech, and he said, when you do great work or when you do what you love, it's like you never work. Right? You fall in love with what you're doing. It becomes effortless. It's not that grind where you have to force yourself to get up. Like, I got up today at 4:50 or 4:30 in the morning to do this podcast. But I truly love doing this because the people that I get on the podcast, like yourself, are so special and have so much to offer the world that, I'm just a delivery vehicle, but I get to learn at the same time. And it resonates with me because my life is about service.
Right.
And so, and even now I look back on what I've been doing and building, and even I need a checkup from the neck up. And I'm fine with it because I don't want my ego to get in the way of progress.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because the ego part of our mind, and ego is a big topic and we could go down a rabbit hole, but the part of our mind that needs certainty is the part of our mind that resists a concept like noble purpose. Because in numbers, there's certainty. In our product, mostly there's certainty. But the idea that I am here to improve life for others and I have to figure it out, how to do it for each individual customer, it might be in the same lane based on what I sell, but that uncertainty is often what keeps people from really stepping into it. Because that was one of the things in our study of salespeople. The top performing salespeople could hold space for uncertainty. That's why
Yeah,
they make sales calls.
amazing. So how do people work with you if you're just doing Zoom or they say they only have 50 people in their company or they're doing $5 million in sales. They're not, a public company. How do people work with you? Do you have courseware or are you hands-on and you implement yourself?
Some of
Because
both. We've worked with smaller companies.
okay.
Yeah, we've definitely worked with smaller companies. Some of it's hands-on, some of it's giving them the tools to do it. But yeah, we've got stuff. So I'm easy to find. If you Google Noble Purpose, you will find me and you hit that contact button on the website. It'll come to me eventually.
Yeah. And so you mentioned you're a mother. How do you impart this to your children? And what tips do you have for parents based on this psychology?
So it's funny you mentioned that. I'll tell you the surprise at the end, but I thought a lot about my children are grown now, and I thought a lot about my role as a parent. And I read a quote in a book when my first child was 1 that really shaped my entire parenting journey. And it was, in an ideal circumstance, a child is raised to believe that they are incredibly special and they are no more special than anyone else, which is pretty profound when you think about it. And what I realized as a parent, that my true north was not daily happiness. My true north as a parent was a high character adult that knew how to make themselves happy. And in order to create that person, I had to be willing as a parent to tolerate moments of unhappiness in their childhood. And I don't mean that I wanted them to have an unhappy childhood, but I had to be able to really think about what values I'm teaching them. And I need to give them, they're going to be disappointed. I need to have space for that. And so the sort of punchline of this is Elizabeth Latardo, who is my business partner, is my daughter.
Nice.
So she's not perfect, but she's awesome. And I wasn't a perfect mother, but she likes me enough to work with me. So it must have gone pretty well.
Wow. I am so impressed, Lisa. You are such a beautiful soul.
Well, that is high praise. I know you talked to.
My son is 6. I'm a
Yeah.
late bloomer, but one of the greatest things ever after COVID, and I've made a lot of sacrifices and still stuck to my guns with this software company. And a lot of people, even after 30 years of doing business, they're like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Because I'm going to make a bigger difference." I've been working with individuals and making them successful. Now I want to work with companies. And the journey's been tough. And I can honestly admit it. I've spent millions of dollars of my own money bootstrapping this thing. And a lot of people have given up along the way. And I pivoted into software, and didn't know anything about it. But one of the greatest things ever was I went outside to my car and I was going to work on a Saturday, right? Because I want to put in some extra time or do something. And my son was outside with his friends playing. And he goes, Dad, Dad, Dad. He goes, guys, that's my dad. He's the creator of the sales machine. And of course, these kids, they're 5 or 6 years, they don't know anything about it, right? And he's like, that's my dad. He's great. He's the creator of the sales machine. Little does he know that I was struggling to make payroll, $40,000, $50,000 a month while we're not even selling, right? And he goes, and he's the richest man in the world. Right. And I'm like, if and I want to still have that demeanor that he doesn't need to know what he doesn't need to know. He just needs to see dad glow, regardless of what's going on. So priceless. And in addition to that, my lady he has a nanny because my lady works and we're very busy. She asked him, what do you want to do when you grow up? And he said, I'm gonna work with my dad, the sales machine. That's what I'm gonna do, right? And I just, those moments are priceless. So parenting with noble purpose is probably what's next for you then.
Maybe that's next. I don't know that my daughter, if you'd asked her, you want to work with your mother, she would have said, definitely not. It wasn't until she went out and she did a couple other things first. She worked at an ad agency and had a not great boss and came to work with me because I was behind on a project and behind on a book deadline. And I said, if you come to work with me for 6 months, you'll get some good experience so you can go to your next play. And that was about 5 years ago. It really worked.
You're awesome. You're really awesome. I've enjoyed this so much. My final question, because
It'll be a good one.
yes, it is. What's next for Lisa McLeod, personally and professionally?
Okay. Professionally, we are doing a better job, and this year is going to be a big year for us, of creating programs that other people can run more readily, more easily. We already had some, but we're getting better at that. So that's our goal for this year. Personally, I am an executive coach as well. And for a long time, I thought that I would write a TV show. And now I am.
Awesome.
A
And where
workplace
can people-
TV show about all the insane things that people do. So we'll let you know if that comes to bear.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Lisa McLeod, selling with noble purpose, leading with noble purpose. If you want to scale, like she said, companies that have a noble purpose outsell sustainably and scalably 350% more than ones who don't. Find her, seek her out, and grow your company. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you.
That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for joining me today. And if you got value from this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and refer a friend. And if you want even more value, go to thesalesmachine.com, click on resources, and there's tons of resources there to increase profits and drive performance in your business. Right on, come on.